We'd like to start today by acknowledging that we're on the unceded sovereign lands of the Gadigal people and pay our respects to elders past and present. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Hey, welcome to So You're Disabled. This episode is brought to you by Spoonie, the social network for neurodivergent, chronically ill and disabled people.
Hey, I'm Soph, I'm disabled and my pronouns are she, they.
I'm Tam, I'm living with a disability and my pronouns are she, her. So today we're going to do something a little bit different and talk about ourselves outside of our disabilities. Because, it's funny, I was talking to Sophie a couple of weeks ago and I said to her, Soph, it's really interesting. Because I went on a radio show and I was like, I was not nervous at all to go on that radio show compared to how I am every single time we do the podcast. Like literally, I don't sleep the night before the podcast. Like last night, I slept for about 3 hours, if even. Poor Soph gets a million different text messages saying I'm still not asleep. And then, we had a conversation about it. And I think ultimately the reason as to why I'm more nervous about the podcast, not because I don't love it, because I do. I love this podcast so much. I love everything about So You're Disabled. But I think always talking about my disability just has a bit of an impact on me, especially because I see myself as so much more outside of that.
Yeah, and we were thinking as well about how one of our posts in particular on Instagram that does really well and still to this day is doing really well is a post where it says you can be disabled and ... and it's like and fashionable and all these other things, and it's like, yeah, because like even for me, even though I identify as disabled, like, yeah, I'm much more than just disabled. I'm many other things. There's many other things about me. It's not my singular identity. And so we thought, why not make that a podcast episode?
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea. Also, I totally forgot to tell you about when I was on the radio. Oh my God, it was so mortifying. I don't think you've even heard of this. So I never been on before, right? And so it was me, this other guy, and the journalist. So the journalist was like, okay, so we're, going to take a break now and here's some music. So as soon as the music came on, I thought, well, we're off air. So I turned to the
no.
turned to the other guy and I go, so, like, how did it go? Like, did I sound okay? Was it all good? And he just, like, panicked. Like, there was panic all over his face and he just gestured with his finger to tell me to please shush because we were still on air. Oh, my God. It was mortifying.
As a journalist myself, internally everything inside of me just tensed up hearing that. No, I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, true story.
Well, you know now.
Yeah, I've learned from that, They say you learn from your mistakes.
It's not like we said anything bad, though.
No. But so many millions of people now know that I have really bad anxiety.
Trust you to be like, so was that okay? Did I sound okay? Like, that's the first thing you have to say once you think you're not on air anymore.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Everyone now knows that I live with anxiety, like, all the time, just constantly. It's why I don't sleep before the podcast. So there you go. You can be disabled and, oh no, actually that's not true, because anxiety is a disability, in my opinion. So.
I was thinking this. I love that our brains went. I was like, you can be disabled and anxious. That's the story of all of us, really.
Yeah. Well, you can be disabled and have low confidence, because clearly that's what that is, right?
I think that's something we've all struggled with before at one point or another.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just joking.
But yeah, no, I think this episode is going to be good to talk about, the other aspects of who we are that aren't just disability. Even if they intersect with our disability, like, it's still, there's many more things beyond that. And I love that story too. That's so funny. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to say, like, what's something our listeners don't really know about you, Tamara?
Well, I don't like eating with spoons. It's such a weird thing, but like, I don't even know if you know this.
Do you not know that that's... Look, no one's heard me say this on the podcast, but off air, I'm constantly like, to tomorrow, you have ADHD and you're probably autistic. The spoon thing is another autism thing.
Really? Well, I don't know. Spoons just make me really, really sad. So for breakfast, I... Yes, they just make me sad. So for breakfast, I have yogurt, and I legitimately eat it with a fork. My yogurt in the morning.
Go and get an autism diagnosis.
Also, well, I mean, you can be disabled and not have a diagnosis. This is the other thing.
I
You
know.
don't need a diagnosis, and that's what we
I
believe.
know.
On So You're Disabled.
I'm just giving you shit.
I know you are, but just since that came up,
No,
you know, we
absolutely.
believe that you don't need a diagnosis to be legitimately disabled.
I don't need a diagnosis to know that you're autistic.
Well, apparently my spoon thing has proved that to you.
Tamara also doesn't eat salad or vegetables with, like, the other food that she's eating for dinner. She eats one thing at a time.
Yeah, I don't want things mixing together. I've never liked that.
Can you say autism? I wish I had a button. I wish I had autism and just on a button. So we're still talking about disability and not the and ... part.
Okay, so the and ... part, I am scared of escalators. So this is somewhat linked to a disability, actually, because I had a flare-up a few years ago, which after that I became scared of escalators. But it's true. So going down, I'm totally fine. But going up, I get like really, really, really scared. Like going up the escalator. I can't do it. I need someone behind me.
I wish I had a LGBTQI button because when you were like going down, I'm fine. I was like, oh my God.
Well, that's another thing then. You can be disabled and date and be intimate.
And go down.
Yeah. Or up. Or under.
We're going to have to put an explicit warning on this episode. I was expecting you to say I speak Italian fluently.
Well, I do. That's another thing. There you go. You can be disabled and speak multiple languages.
Molto bene. See,
I feel like this is so focused on me. I don't talk about myself
Oh,
very
I
much. What
love
about you?
focusing on you, Tamara, because it
God.
makes you uncomfortable. It's really
It
fun.
really does.
What about me? I'm blanking.
I know it's hard when people ask.
Yeah, what's something you don't know about me? I actually really love writing. It's why I studied journalism to begin with, because I was like, journalism, writing, that's a great idea. And then I realized that as a journalist, you very rarely get to write the things that you want to write about. You're more reporting on what's going on. And yeah, it made me not love writing anymore, just because I was constantly writing, but not about the stuff I really wanted to. And so I was like, okay, let's come back to that another time.
You're an amazing writer.
Oh, thank you.
You really are.
Thank you. So yeah, that's something that people don't necessarily know about me. I enjoy other forms of art. I'm just not necessarily very good at them.
That's not true.
Oh, Tamara.
I mean, you're great at slicing cake, birthday cake. You're amazing
Thank you.
at that.
Yeah, it's called postmodernism.
I'm giving her shit. She's so bad at slicing cake. It's
Excuse
hilarious.
me? Who are you to say there's only one right way to slice cake? It's called postmodernism. Look it up.
That's what I meant about you being good, like, as an artist. You're very artistic when it comes to slicing cake.
I know. Look, it all looks the same eventually, you know, at the end of the cycle. So
So disturbing. I think you've just ruined birthday cake for me.
you were the one talking about going down and up, so...
Okay, well, talking about cake, the one thing that Soph and I both love is a dessert. So we'll often go and get gelato, like ice cream. It's one of my favourites of all time.
Even when Tamara's not allowed to. And then her mum is like, Sophie, why did you let Tamara go and get gelato?
Who cares if that's what doctors have said? They're not all knowing. Seriously. Oh my God, this reminds me. I love chocolate. As you know, like I'm a total chocoholic.
Mm.
So when I was 17, I went to this like country town as like a day trip thing with my friend. And we got lost in the supermarket. And rather than calling me, she knew exactly where I'd be. So she just went to the chocolate aisle. And alas, she found me there.
That checks out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. This is so funny. When Tamara and I were 13, we were like, I don't look forward to, if I have children, having 13-year-old children, because Tamara and I at 13 were nightmares.
We really were.
And so we couldn't understand why our parents wouldn't allow us to go very far away from home. Like, we were allowed to go to the shopping centre near where we both lived, and that was like as far as we were allowed to go. And they had to drop us off and pick us up, and it was like time limited. Like, we could go see a movie or like go to a store, but we weren't allowed, like, we didn't have free reign, right?
And we thought we were like adults and could do whatever we wanted.
Yeah. I mean, 13, 30, like same thing, really.
Absolutely.
Especially almost being 30. I'm like, yes, this is almost the same thing as being 13. That's a total joke. And any 13-year-olds listening to this, please humble yourselves. Like, there's much more to learn about the world. But anyway, we decided that it would be really fun and really easy for us to just hop on the train and go across the city, very far away from where we both lived, and that would be fine, and that would be really fun. So we did that. And then what we didn't account for, because we were 13, was that there were track works happening. So the trains for a section of this journey weren't operating, and it was buses instead of trains. Now, that takes up more time because buses get stopped in traffic, unlike trains. So all of our perfect planning amounted to not very good outcomes, because we ended up being much later getting back to where our parents had dropped us off. And Tamara's parents came to pick us up. And even though they were speaking in Italian, the tone of their voice told me, we are not happy. We know you've been up to no good. Tamara and I, before getting in the car, came up with the genius excuse that I had gotten my period. We needed to find some sanitary products. And you know what? None of the stores had them. They were all sold. Every store that we went to was sold out. And this is why we were late back to meet them. Because we desperately just needed to find sanitary products, and we could not find them anywhere.
We genuinely thought like that excuse would like be totally okay.
How could you question it? I have my period. Your dad doesn't want to question me about my period. Like, smart thinking.
We couldn't understand why like neither of our parents were like buying this excuse.
Yeah. So that's something about us that people don't. We were like problem children.
Yeah. And I remember we were traveling because I wanted to meet some guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we just wanted to see if he was walking around other shopping centre.
Yeah, just like check it out.
We didn't see him.
No, we didn't. We just like want it to be free and young and you know, a bit rebellious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We really we push the boundaries in a lot of areas of our lives. Like, pushing the boundaries of the systems and ableism is not our first rodeo with pushing back.
And especially since we come from ethnic families, that was like huge for us to be doing. Like in ethnic families, it doesn't fly by.
I'm pretty sure we got grounded after that.
I'm pretty sure I couldn't talk to you anymore for like 2 weeks, which was a nightmare. Like, you have to do what they say when they say. Like, my dad used to say, this is the road and that's where you walk on. Like, not anywhere else. This is where you walk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh.
So strict.
Oh my God. I also like really hated school, like especially high school. And
me too. Who likes them? They're so weird.
And I remember in year 7 and 8, especially, I would often say that I was sick to like get out of going to school. And I had a period of time where I was living with my dad, and there was no excuse you could give that man in the world. Like, he was full ethnic father and was like I remember one day, I think I like woke up late and he was already like at work by the time I called at like 7:30 in the morning or something, or like 8 a.m. And I was like, oh, I've like missed my bus, I'm running late. And he was like, not a problem. There's money like for you on the dining room table. You go get the bus and, you know, you just have to sign in late. Like, there was no excuse in the world for that man. But I thought in my mind, like, oh, if I'm going to be late, like, there's no point. No. No.
Not with ethnic parents. So
No.
there's just no way.
No. And yeah, so it was a really interesting experience to grow up with a father who, you know, there was no excuse in the world you could give that man for like not showing up to school and not showing up to work. Like, you do it.
Yeah, it's just like a universal experience of any child of ethnic parents. Me too. But speaking of our parents, this also reminds me of another thing about me. I am quite romantic naturally. Like a bit of a, like I tend to romanticize things is what I mean, right? So my parents have this sort of relationship where they were each other's first loves, been together since they were 14.
cute.
It's so adorable. And literally we're together until my dad passed away last year, but they were super in love with each other, right? So when I was 15 and I had my first ever boyfriend who, spoiler alert, lasted for an entire 3 weeks, I was absolutely devastated when it ended. Not so much because I really missed the guy that I was dating. I was devastated because I was never going to get my happily ever after like my parents had. Like, I just couldn't understand. I thought that was like a thing that people did. And so I remember like crying and my dad being like to me, Tamara, because that's how he would call me, right? He would say Tamara. And he'd be like, in this case, it was a bit softer because he wasn't angry with me. He was trying to help me. So he was like, Tamara, figlia mia, which means my daughter. Like, this, like, it doesn't work that way. For some people it does, but for other people it doesn't. Like, it's okay. And I was like crying, like, I'm never going to have my love. Like, I'm also dramatic.
Really? I never knew that about you. I mean, sarcasm is obvious in that, because I think anyone that's known Tamara for more than a minute knows she romanticizes life, she's anxious, and she has a tendency sometimes to be a bit dramatic.
Meanwhile, Soph is not just incredibly brilliant and very smart, she's also amazing with technology. And I think because of her journalism background, she is the best private investigator in the world. Like, the absolute best. Like, I'll tell her, hey, like, I've, like, started speaking to this person, like, literally, like, 5 lines into talking to him, and she will have, like, done, like, a very thorough, like, background check on this person.
Oh, in my defense, like, this is, okay, recently we were at a friend's birthday. Tamara was running 40 minutes late. I was so tired, but I waited for her because I wanted to see her before I left.
So sweet of you.
And in typical Tamara fashion was running late, and she arrives, and as she arrives, some of the other friends that were there were leaving, and one of them, who's like a friend of a friend, was like, Tamara, why are you dating these guys? Sophie says, you know, you like these terrible men. Why? And what had happened was this woman had asked about, like, oh, what sort of guys does Tamara like? And I was like, look, just imagine, like, the worst of the worst, you know, like compulsive liars, fraudsters, fuckboys. Like, that's Tamara's jam, as a joke. And, like...
It's definitely not my jam.
But, you know, there's been some questionable choices in terms of dates previously.
I'm a bit naive.
Look, we have this wild story about this guy Tamara was, like, seeing for a little bit. And, like, we had our suspicions that something was a bit not right. But on this day, actually, that's really funny. The very first day we were trying out recording this podcast.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Not the very first episode we released, but the very first ever version of this podcast that maybe won't ever see the light of day. And we then decided to celebrate and go get gelato.
Like we do.
Yeah. And then we were like, let's go for a walk. But then it started raining as soon as we came out. And so I was like, oh, okay, we'll just like go in the car. Maybe we'll like drive somewhere. So as soon as we've driven away, the rain stops. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just drive around the other side of this park and we'll go there. We'll like walk the opposite way. And as we're driving to find a parking spot in this park, I've only ever seen a photo of this guy. I look to my left and I see this man walking next to another woman.
Who was very well groomed and very well dressed. Not that I could see at this point because I don't have Soph's better than 20/20 vision. She actually does have better than 20/20 vision.
And he was supposedly in America for some like business deal.
He was literally saying that he had to sell his startup. So he was texting me in like accordance with the time difference in this part of the US he was in. But not only, he had fully told me the street he was living on. And I Googled it. It was a real street.
Staying on.
Staying on. Yeah.
And yeah, he... Anyway, so we park the car. I'm like, Tamara. And I'm like, oh my God, I need a disguise. Like, why don't I have a disguise in my car? Anyway, so we start walking behind them. But that's the thing. If it hadn't have rained, if we had have walked when we originally wanted to walk, we would have he might have seen us before we saw him. Because we would have been coming at him like face on. But because the rain and everything, we got to follow them. And Tamara was like, yeah, I think it's him. And we did like a little lap and then we like turned around and she was like, yep, definitely him. And she walks up to him and she's like, oh, hi, I thought you were in the US. And he was so shocked. It was amazing.
But he had just messaged me like 2 hours prior telling me all like detailing about his day in the US and how he had to stay there longer.
Yeah. So it was just like so funny. Anyways, totally a fraudster.
No. You're missing the best part. Soph then, being the like private investigator person that she is, realized, so this guy had told me all of these details about his startup and his colleagues, and he had gone as far as telling me about his colleagues' kids and everything about them and like the things he would do with them outside of their work life. Anyways, turns out that it was all just a big like lie, and all of those people that he had as his colleagues were real people from different parts of the world with completely different names.
Oh yeah, I like reverse image searched the photos from his website of
you
his
did
business.
Some like wizarded technological thing.
We call her Nonna Tamara because to her this is wizard technological things. But yeah, and realize that like none of those people actually probably exist in his life and definitely don't work for his business. So yeah, a fraud. But yeah, that's one funny story. So this is why, Tamara, now when you're like, oh, I'm talking to this guy, I'm gonna go see him, I'm like, let me just see what I can find out about that person. I don't do that with anyone else.
I'm so blessed and so lucky. And then it's so funny when these stories like don't turn out so well because Soph, as I'm sure you've noticed, is so funny. She's one of the funniest people I know. She should have her own comedy show. And we both love dark humor. So she phrases these stories in like the most entertaining of ways.
Well, thank you. I mean, something you may not know about Tamara is that she's very, like, fashionable. She's, like, dresses immaculately all the time. And she'll, like, show up looking amazing and just, like, sorry, I just had to throw something on. I'm like, absolutely fuck off.
It's not true, but...
It is true.
Well, thank you. You're being too nice, though.
No, I'm not.
But, like, all of my family, like my parents and my grandparents, they're all hairdressers. So I was very much raised in the beauty industry and also being Italian. And I think just being a wog in general, but especially being Italian, right? clothes are like a big part of our identity, and especially with my mum, like she's played a big influence on that in my life. So yeah, I don't know, I really love clothes, and I feel like it's a really nice way for us to express ourselves and represent ourselves, and that's why I love like adaptable clothing, because I would always get really like feel a bit shitty about myself being in the hospital and like having to leave the hospital and getting scans done, etc. And I would always think, oh, like, you know, I feel better if I'm like dressed a bit nicer, and it's really unfair to exclude disabled people from having like nice clothes. So it makes me so happy that now we have like amazing disabled designers making beautiful adaptable clothing. It just makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And also, Sophie, you're super fashionable too, and you always look immaculate and incredible. Like even right now, you look beautiful.
Another thing about Tamara is she can't just ever take a compliment. She's got to compliment you back and take the focus off of her because it makes her really uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, my friend, who is a psychologist, told me that he's never met anyone as skilled as I am at deflecting. So I now just wear that with like, it's like a crown of honor, really. I'm like the queen of deflection.
It's true. It is true. I agree with that analysis. But yeah, I mean, Tamara also is just like the sweetest person in the world. And this is one of my favorite stories about her. She will, she feels sorry for ants when she sees them in her kitchen. And like this one time a few years ago, she saw ants and felt sorry for them and was leaving crumbs of food out for them. And her dad told her off and was like, what are you doing? And she's like, but I feel bad for them. They're looking for food. And he was like, please stop. You're just going to make this problem worse. And so she, one by one, picks up these ants and takes them outside because she doesn't want to hurt them. But then in the process, sometimes hurts them and then feels really bad. And that's just like the sweetest thing in the whole world.
Oh my God, Soph, you're so sweet. But like to say that, you're so cute. But honestly, you are the sweetest person in the world. So as
yeah, see, you're really, everyone is hearing how not good at taking a compliment you are.
but this is true though. So
Yeah.
as you know, last year,
it's okay if it's true, but it's not okay if it's not true. Or no, it's okay. Oh, I don't know. I've confused myself.
That's okay. We're now talking about the sweetest thing you've recently
great.
done for my nonna. So last year, as you know, my nonna came to see her son before he passed away. And anyways, as you know, she stayed with us for a while. And in that time, Soph got to really know her and connect with her. So before she left, and my nonna left saying she's never coming back here because she like misses her home. Anyways, Sophie wrote the most beautiful card to my nonna, which my nonna doesn't speak English, so she asked me to translate. So I texted her the translation. Sophie then hand wrote it in Italian and gave it to my nonna. My nonna literally, like, it meant so much to her. She was so emotional when she got it. She cried. And till this day, this card exists right next to her bedside table in her bedroom. And like a typical nonna, she even dusts it and everything.
Oh,
because that's
so
how much
sweet.
it means to her, because it was so sweet of you to have done that, Soph.
Well, I hope I can go visit her in Italy at some stage. That would be really lovely.
I would love that. She would love that. She always talks about it because she calls her Sophia. So she's always like, how is Sophia? Give Sophia my love.
I need to work on my Italian before I do that.
Oh, her Italian's actually pretty good. She's really good with food as well, Sophie. Like, this is a way that her and I very much connect. We both love food. So her pronunciation with like Italian food is like perfect.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. Tamara's working on her Chag Sameach.
It's very difficult.
Which is how you say happy holidays in Hebrew. But yeah, I think I hope it's been interesting to learn these other things about us. And, you know, I think while we are focused on disability and changing that narrative in society about disability, I see this as, and we see this as a way of doing that too, because it's like, here's who we are as people, you know, outside of our disabilities. Like, it's not just, you know, the way that we start this podcast. Hey, I'm Soph and I'm disabled and my pronouns are she, they. There's so much more to me. There's so much more to Tamara. And there's so much more to all of you that we are keen to learn as well. And we love
Absolutely.
when you share with us.
We really do. Oh, just really quickly, I forgot to say, you can be disabled and cool. Like, we need to be starting to, like, view ourselves as being cool because our perceptions of what is cool changes over time, right? Like, in the 80s, the 70s, smoking was really cool. And sure, depending on where you are in the world, it's still viewed as being cool. But we now know it's really bad for your health, so it's seen as being less cool. So why aren't we, as disabled people, viewing ourselves as being cool?
Yeah. I love that terminology. I feel like it's very millennial.
So I'm not a nonna after all.
Non-millennial, like, same thing, really.
You know, I didn't know what OG meant. I had to be like, Soph, what is OG?
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested to ask it before we wrap up this episode. What does Riz mean?
I don't.
And on that note, Nonna Tamara and I will go because she needs a nap. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Take care of yourself.
Bye.
Bye.